Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Digging Through the Hype, Can AI and ML Assist Clinical Development? I'm Heather Masaccio with Clinical Leader. With me today, I have Brent Mayers, MBA Executive Director, Clinical Analytics, Philip Ross, PhD, Clinical Strategic Analytics, and Gerard Conway, MSc Solutions Architect and Spotfire Expert, all with Revity Signals. In this webinar, our speakers will be delving into various approaches to leveraging AI and machine learning when handling clinical data. After their presentation, we'll be holding a live Q&A session. Feel free to submit questions as we go along. We'll get to as many as possible during the Q&A, and any that we can't get to, we'll follow up with after the event. Now, if you run into any issues, please try refreshing your browser first. If you need additional support, go ahead and submit a question via the Q&A, and I'll get you back on track. Finally, the webinar will be available for on-demand viewing. You'll receive a link via email as soon as it's available. With all that said, I'm going to turn it over to Brent to get us started.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate the introduction. And welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining. Once again, this is Brent, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us. I know there's lots of options out there and lots of virtual events, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us. We have a great cast today and a great topic. This group today brings a great wealth of experience in analytics and clinical development. It's a good sort of meshing of those sort of expertise. You know, our goal is to sort of make this a forthright and enlightening conversation. So, you know, how can AI ML enhance clinical analytics? You know, I'm based, just really briefly, I'm based out of the beautiful Pacific Northwest in the US, in Portland, Oregon. I spend my time sort of rock climbing and chasing the perfect cup of coffee. You know, really, you can see my bio sort of in the link leading into the webinar. But generally speaking, I've had a career sort of leading and building technical teams and building analytics solutions in the CRO space, also across pharma and biotech, and also defense. But really, my professional passion and expertise is in sort of building those analytical solutions. Really, the question that I strive for is how can we more effectively consume information, act on insights, and recall decisions. These are all critical aspects to achieve sort of safety, efficacy, and sort of reproducibility in clinical trials. It's not just enough to have data. It's not enough to see information, right? Nor is it enough to have an audit record of information. The three must be in concert, and that is what I'm trying to build with my colleagues on this call. You know, my team is sort of aiming to integrate AI and ML capabilities to help really facilitate these three functions. The key really is design sort of the technology, the solution such that it's effortless and sort of verifiable. So we'll focus on clinical use cases that can be enhanced with AI and ML. We're not really focusing sort of on the technical aspects, nor sort of the fundamentals of AI, but really the use cases. But I do recommend that, you know, there's some really good content out there for that sort of introductory information, like the Society for Clinical Data Management has a Clinical Data Science 101 that really talks at a sort of a nice introductory level on that. But really, sort of as a good skeptic, we'll discuss the challenges in implementing AI as well as sort of what the benefits are. But specifically, we'll talk about the challenges of sort of off-the-shelf large language models and sort of the cost. Before we go further, I'd like to bring you into the conversation with a poll. So I'll hand it back over to Heather.
Okay, great. I'm going to pop right back on. And so our first poll question is asking, how are you using AI? Are you just getting started? Are you searching the internet, AI search? Are you writing documents, Gen AI tools? Are you tracking clinical data status? Or are you exploring clinical data? Now, if you want to go ahead and submit what you're doing and how you're using AI, that would be wonderful. We want to see your feedback so we can kind of work that into our conversation. And just for the audience's information, Brent's last name is Myers, not Mayers. I mispronounced it like 10 seconds after I confirmed it with him. Sorry about that, Brent. So yeah, we want to know how you're using AI. Let's see here. If you want to go ahead and, sorry, I need to click click on each A, B, C, or D right here. You're putting it into our Q&A. Sorry about that, folks. Go ahead and submit your answers right here. That way we can kind of compile them together and see what everyone is doing. I see a lot of people putting in their answers, which is exciting. What do you think, Brent? Should we forward?
Let's do it.
Let's see what's going on here. Let's see what everybody's saying. So how are you using? Here are your results. What do you think? What do you think about these results? It's kind of going towards what you are thinking for our speakers.
Yeah, I think this aligns with what we've had in sort of our conversations really across the industry. I think in general, sort of in sort of personal life, it sort of lines up with again sort of what I see outside of work as well. Really sort of how do I sort of dip my toes in and sort of facilitate making sort of the day-to-day easier. But the good news is we're really going to be focusing on sort of those latter two options here to see how that can again facilitate your professional life. So thank you for that. And if there's sort of more details or questions behind that as to like what is the reason behind sort of your choice here, please bring it into the Q&A at the end of the session as well. Right. So data science is a spectrum. Sort of where does AI and ML fit? Most analyses within the disparate functions of clinical development live within the bottom left of this graph, right? So I think Gartner's done a good job at sort of outlining what is the spectrum, and really, like I said, I think clinical development generally most of the functions that we sort of see or experience in the industry, right, fit in that bottom descriptive analytics section. While hyped as our savior, why hasn't data science proved effective? The clinical industry have not been able to really upskill or train enough data scientists, and also technology hasn't really been successful in closing the skill gap. So I believe that machine learning and artificial intelligence can sort of automate some of these analytics and sort of drive pattern recognition really through this spectrum that you see here. This could also be really have the effect of increasing adoption, right? Make this more of a more approachable tool set and reduce sort of the barrier to entry. But really being able to converse in plain language, I think, can be a great asset to sort of making each of these aspects of data science more approachable. Really the key for us, right, is how do we design those into a solution such that you can verify the results and also keep humans adequately in the loop of the decision making, right? Previously, we've presented a webinar on an algorithmic approach to identifying sites that will likely under or over-report adverse events, or what should be happening in my data. This was conceived by a group led by Roche, but made open to the public for general use, right? We displayed in our webinar using the same algorithm, the benefits of how the model can be improved using interactive visualizations. This allows you to answer more questions, but also more importantly, to verify the results of the model. Really the goal was to sort of use visualization, sort of interactivity to help remove sort of the black box, let you drill down. And we see this process, being automated and being more explanatory through a large language model dialogue, really to recommend the model in the first place, then see the description of the patterns, and then also explain the results, rather than sort of you sort of kind of seeing a sort of a static image. And of course, being able to use visualizations to sort of aid in that sort of analysis and description. So, my point is that we've lowered the barrier to understanding the model behind what you see here, but also expedited the means of understanding the patterns. Perhaps then, AI could summarize and save your collective thoughts, right, for that audit record. So, before we discuss AI ML further, let's simplify sort of clinical analytics, right? So we can then dissect, where do we see it fitting, right? I find one method of problem solving is to physically draw out concepts and doodle your way, if you will, through your thoughts. At its most basic level, we need data, decisions, and people, and they are divided by various factors. Clinical has not only many data sources, but changing and also dirty data sources, right? We're always importing and changing the data within it. That's, indicated here by the 5 blobs, if you will, that we have here. But the end result really is to access analysis-ready data. This is what a good solution should provide. Decisions start with core questions, right, and follow a logical progression. A good solution should be adaptive and allow your analytical questions to sort of keep track of your results and your findings, right? Lastly, people, right? The most complicated and most forgotten part of the paradigm, particularly when building solutions, right? Data and decisions are incomplete if no one can reproduce your results. A good solution includes collaboration capabilities to seamlessly bring functional areas together in the analysis and decision-making process. I will refer back to this concept sort of later on in the presentation, sort of keep tying it back together. So now let's move forward to sort of a specific use case, right? Evolving data review with AI and ML, right? So clinical data review is rife with sort of inefficiencies. So let's use that use case. The Society for Clinical Data Management published a great paper on the evolution of data review. I recommend you review it in full. Really the outline starting with stage 1, right, which is an automation of traditional reviews. Rather than waiting for your vendors or internal groups to email your data or wait for programmers or specialized groups to send you static reports, this is really about automating the data refresh and human quality thresholds, right? So that they notify you that when thresholds have been crossed. Think of key risk indicators, dashboards that are programmatically run data through the rules on a schedule. Stage 2, right, is using a large language model to review regulatory documents like ICH E8, also critical to quality factors to review your data, right? So think of this like as reducing the guesswork, or at least the inefficiencies in where your data review should be focusing. That's a question we get regularly, right? Where should we be focusing? And it also aligns you with published guidance. But what happens if we look across the broader set of information, right? So stage 3 is just that. Large language models, reviewing all past protocols, study results, and audit data, and then comparing it against published critical to quality guidance. This trains the language model to see which trials miss data quality issues and cause deviations or failures, right? Or it can also look for success factors, but then publish those recommendations to you, putting the human back in the loop, and then monitor those in real time. Stage 4, moves to allow AI to act on what it learned in stage 3, and then sort of resolve those less critical items on its own and send time-sensitive notifications, right? And then bring human in the loop for serious adverse events and other critical safety tasks. So again, always bringing a human back into the loop, sort of is the critical element of design here. So going back to our paradigm, right? Let's organize the various clinical analytics use cases against that paradigm. So data mapping, medical coding, data reconciliation, right? This is the root of not only analysis, but also a requirement for any AI and ML application, right? Like the old adage goes, garbage in, garbage out. As such, really, this is the critical path to our collective success, right? Being able to discuss our learnings on this topic. We'll discuss a little bit further, next, but ultimately being able to get your data in a usable, analyzable format. Also, sort of outlier detection follows the data review path we just discussed, right, in the previous slide. Training your model on published guidance and existing audit data will help you identify and monitor critical to quality factors. This leads also to a successful RBQM program, right? So that takes us over to decisions, right? This is where like a large language model could be used to update your quality thresholds over the course of a trial and also explain its results. Large language models are also well versed in summary of large amounts of data, right? And looking for patterns and comparing them against published literature. For example, my colleague Gerard will demo some elements of a large language model, generating visualizations and also providing insights into concomitant medications, potential interactions with study drug, but also descriptive analysis of safety data and sort of reviewing patterns across safety domains. So that'll be sort of a nice live demo later on. And then the entire FDA data validation rules could also be automated sort of in this same thing. Lastly, analysis of audit trail data can help reduce fraud and predict sites or forms of concern, right? At a minimum, it can summarize your actions during your trial and also help minimize sort of the burden on sites through managing your queries and issues process. So really, I'd like to show you some of our work on radically improving the process of getting data into an analysis-ready format, right? The challenge conceptually is simple, right? Can we automate mapping EDC data against STTM and more quickly and accurately than our manual processes, right? Our AutoMapper proof of concept, we built this that learns from existing manually created data maps, right? So we've gone in and manually created some mappings, and then the unmapped columns are then read through rows of data and compare those against the expected data types and values. Then, based on forms and perceived structure of data, it recommends the data transformations and interpretation of correctly formatted data. The user is then presented with results, to agree or adjust, from what they've seen the model recommend. So now we'll transition over to a brief, minute-and-a-half video that shows this proof of concept that we built in action, right? So mapping the data and sort of showing the recommendations. Then we'll come back over and wrap up and hand it over to Gerard. So quick video.
We've built a simple web app that showcases the functionality of our machine learning-based auto mapping engine. First, you upload a source dataset in either a CSV or SAS file. Choose a target standard and click Transform. You are then taken to a confirmation page where you can see the predicted schema mappings. You could also provide your own mapping if the auto mapping result is not accurate. For example, let's say the source AEENTPT column, which is currently mapped to NA, should actually be mapped to AESTDAT. All you need to do is click on the checkbox to discard the predicted mapping, open the drop-down menu, and choose the correct mapping. Remember, you cannot choose the same mapping for two source columns.
When you're satisfied with the schema mapping, click Confirm. That takes you to the transformation page where you can view the predicted transformations. Here, also you can choose whether to use the machine learning predicted transformations or to provide your own transformations. For the date columns, if the dates are not parsed properly, then the user can provide an input parser which tells the system how to read dates correctly. For example, in this scenario, we have dates of two differing lengths in our source column, so we have to provide two separate format parsers if we choose to discard the predicted transformations. The formats we provide will first be validated against the source data to make the process foolproof. More information on how to construct the format parser is given in the documentation. As soon as you're done, you can download the transformation.
All right. So that gives you a glimpse of again, a proof of concept, and really where we're working on now is sort of integrating that into our larger analytics platform. And really in that proof of concept, right, we were able to beat the benchmark set by sort of our internal consulting team, really after even loading 12 studies of data. We found that it was much quicker, but we're still working on sort of the quality aspects, right? So let's talk about sort of some of the challenges, right? The data structure transformations and management of incomplete data still required quite some level of manual interaction, right? But even with those manual actions, the auto mapping was still quite a bit quicker. At the time of the proof of concept, one of the other challenges was infrastructure costs, right? Since then, it's come down quite a bit. We have a more cost-effective solution in place, but it is also really a lesson learned, in sort of building out these solutions is a real challenge. Lastly, sort of we're working with one vendor EDC, right? And sort of in order to plan for a broader variety of data sources, we're looking to sort of train our model on not only manually created maps from that one data source, but also being able to train it on annotated forms, case report forms, but also vendor data specifications, right, to help speed up that process. Also, we're proud to say we earned a patent sort of on this model. I encourage you to look it up if you want to learn more details about it, or contact us and we can have a more sort of detailed conversation on our auto mapping capabilities. Lastly, before I hand it over to Gerard, right, I'll give a brief introduction into our platform, Signals Clinical, right? The cornerstone of it, right, is intelligent mapping. But it centers around the paradigm that I described originally at the beginning of this presentation, right? Data, decisions, people, really it's built around those three concepts to be able to facilitate and bring the three together. Really, these orange boxes here highlight some of the AI ML use cases that we've discussed and how they fit into our Signals Clinical solution. Today, we have an interface that helps facilitate the mapping. And really, again, that's where the auto mapping will come in, is to help sort of automate and facilitate and reduce sort of the time and quality and improve the quality in the mapping process. Right. But next up, my colleague Gerard, he'll demonstrate, what you can do in generating, describing clinical data visualizations. Right. We are an exclusive partner for Spotfire in the life sciences, and Spotfire has a direct integration into Signals Clinical today, so you can sort of leverage the best of both worlds. So with that, right, I'll now like to turn the floor over to one of the best in the business, Gerard Conway, to give you more description and a demo. Gerard.
Great, thank you, Brent. So a lot of our customers today are using Spotfire in the clinical domain across a variety of use cases, medical review being one of them, but also risk-based monitoring, operational metrics, and a variety of others. Spotfire have just released Spotfire Copilot, which is a built-in AI assistant inside of Spotfire. And it can help you with interrogating your Spotfire data, but also working with your own proprietary content as well. So a couple of the kind of things it can do for you. Well, it can let you ask simple how-to questions in Spotfire. How do I add a calculated column to my analyses? Or it can do chart generation. You can ask it to build charts for you. Like I said, you can interrogate your data in Spotfire. So you can ask questions around your data set and have it provide you with answers. But you can also have custom conversations. So augment the data that you've got loaded inside your Spotfire session with other internal or proprietary documentation to help assist you as part of your analysis session. And that's facilitated by what's known as a retrieval augmented generation design. So that allows you to index your own content alongside the Spotfire data that you've got loaded and use that all in conjunction with the large language model. And it can be useful for both seasoned and novice Spotfire users alike. It's available today from the Spotfire community site, and you've pretty much got full control over how you set up and deploy it and which GPT service you use to drive the large language model. So let me jump into a demonstration, I think, to show some of these capabilities. So I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully that's coming through now. So this is an example of a clinical review data set loaded inside of Spotfire. It's got a number of pages and visuals to help with the analysis of the data. But I can go ahead straight away and ask some questions around my data set. So I've got an AE table in here. So I could ask it to describe my AE table and what could it be used for? So that question is going to go to Copilot. It's going to use some of the information it's taking from my Spotfire session here in combination with the large language model to go away and interrogate that data and describe it back to me. So large language model is very good at, building kind of descriptions of information. And that can be really helpful, certainly in a scenario if you get a data set shared with you, maybe it's your first contact with it, it can be helpful in just letting you know what's going on there. So it's come back to me, it's given me a description of my data, so I can go ahead and let me zoom in on that a little bit here. So it's found in adverse event data with clinical study context. It contains a rich set of columns, various types. So it goes through and lists some of the columns in there, which are the number columns, study day, start of adverse event. Gives me a description of what that column is. This isn't a description that sits within my data set specifically. This is something it's inferred from the large language model. Again, describes the dates that are in there. Also, other information about subject identifiers, sponsor identifiers, tells me how I can use them, and then how I might utilize this data. So I might be able to do some temporal analysis of adverse event distribution over the course of the study could be built from this particular data set. So it always does a nice job of, telling you, describing a data set and what you might be able to get from that data set. But I can also use it to build visualization. So I could ask it to, using my DM table, create me a bar chart of subject count by treatment group and color by race. So again, it's interrogating the data that I've got loaded in here, comes back with a visualization that I can create. So I can click on that to create the visual. And in this case, it's created me that chart. It's counted up the subjects from my demographics table. It's put the planned arm code here on the x-axis, which does represent the treatment group. So I've asked it something a little bit more generic in terms of treatment group. It's looked at my data set that I have available and determined that this is, the closest match it has for a treatment group. So it's put that on the x-axis, and it's colored by what I asked it for, which was race in this case. And I could also, modify it, make it horizontal. So if I'm not too sure how to do that within the UI, I could always ask it a help question here about how I would do that, and it would give me back the instructions for how to do that. But you can also ask it for certain functions within the application to drive the application as well. We saw it describing the data set earlier, but here's an example where I can ask it to describe a visualization for me. So I can go ahead. One of the options in Copilot is to explain a visualization. You then pick it from the visualizations on your page. And again, it's gathering information from my Spotfire session, structuring that information, and using the large language model to describe what's going on there. So it's got me a nice lengthy description of my data set. So let me zoom in again just to take a look here. So it describes the visualization and the setup. It's again inferring some things like PBO probably represents placebo, underscore H probably represents high dosage, gives me some highlights and trends that exist within the chart, some outliers, and also usefully kind of highlights some unusual observations it might find in there. So in this case, it's saying the presence of a severe cases in the categories neoplasm, benign, malignant, unspecified in both the high and the low group for my treatment arms, albeit with low counts, is notable given their serious nature of these events. So that kind of maybe along with these other trends and outliers can help target my analysis inside of Spotfire. So if I come back to my chart, I might want to take a look at that category, so the neoplasm category here, and I can look across and see that actually, yeah, I do have severe events here and in the low dose arm of my trial, and I don't have any of those events in my placebo. So that might be something I want to dig into, explore the subjects that have that particular, those adverse events in that particular category. So a useful assistant to kind of, from what is a very rich chart at the outset, maybe give you a starting point to hone in on certain aspects of that that you might have missed by just visually scanning the chart. Like I said, you can also interrogate your data with Spotfire as well. So I can ask it using my LB table, what 5 lab tests have the highest average percent change from baseline. And in this particular scenario, in a scenario where it doesn't have that exact data available necessarily straight from a table or straight from a visualization, Copilot will prompt me, you know, it'll create a data view essentially that it needs to answer that particular question. And it'll give me a description of, look at how it's going to create that, that visualization. And then you can go ahead and create that view and resubmit your question. And it comes back with the items here. So it's telling me based on that data view that it described it was going to create up here. These are the lab tests, EOS. And I didn't tell it which column either. Again, it's used kind of lab short name as the, this used the lab test or examination short name column to do that. So it tells me that EOS is 35% average increase from baseline, then ALT bond at the bottom there of 4%. And again, I can use that as a cue maybe for coming back in and using my explorative visual capability in Spotfire to drill into that eosinophiles data graph and look at my subjects and see if there's been driven by one particular subject or a group of subjects. And I can start to use the other filters to drill down, maybe explore this a subject at a time if I wanted to as well. But using any of these visuals, you may end up with a situation where you drill down to a specific patient of interest that you want to drill into. So in this case, I'm looking at a patient profile here for a selected subject. I can see the adverse events they've had, the conmeds they've been given, the dosing from our trial drug, and any lab tests, in this case, a liver panel that I'm looking at here. But here I can switch over to maybe my proprietary kind of indexed content. So I've indexed information about medications in this particular case. So I can ask it, for example, if I'm not familiar with Lanoxin, I can ask it what conditions is Lanoxin used to treat. So it comes back, it tells me it contains digoxin. It's used to treat supraventricular arrhythmias such as fibrillations, flutters. If I come back and look at my patient profile, I can see, yeah, there are some palpitations here at around the same time. So that was probably the driver for the use of Lanoxin here. But it also tells me where it's getting that. It gives me a reference from where it's getting that information. But I could also ask it, perhaps, are there any issues with conmeds I should be aware of? Again, if I zoom in there, it goes through and it describes to me some details that could be relevant. So enzyme-inducing drugs such as rifampicin and others here could be an issue. So again, a helping hand here in terms of helping me maybe check for some other things with this patient profile, just to see if there are any other conmeds in play here that I should be concerned with. And in this case, there aren't, so maybe I can move on with my review. I've also kind of indexed all of the information from this template in Spotfire. So again, there's a lot of pages, a lot of visuals, a lot of content to help me explore an analysis, but maybe I want to know if there's something specific in there. So I can ask it, is there a page or visual for subject disposition versus treatment? Yep, so it goes ahead and tells me there's a visual for subject disposition versus treatment. It's located on the disposition page under this particular section. The purpose of the visualization is to show patterns of standardized disposition terms by treatment group using color and size. So I can then make my way, identify my disposition page, and go look at that particular visualization. So again, in this case, helping me understand the content or the structure of the content that I've got loaded inside my Spotfire session. So again, a really useful aid in kind of guiding you through a process or giving you a helping hand along the way as you're trying to make your way through the data that you have available. So let me jump back out of here for a second, stop my sharing. Just talk a little bit about the structure or the architecture, not in too much detail. One portion of Copilot is you have a Spotfire package. So the Copilot panel that you see, you deploy that on your Spotfire server like you would a normal package. You're going to need access to a large language model, a GPT model in this particular case, currently supported by Copilot. And then when it comes to the retrieval augmented generation portion, so this is your own content that you want to use alongside your data that you've loaded in Spotfire. So in my example, I was looking at medication data set. For that, you're going to need a vector database to store your indexed content in. And Copilot also provides a data loader to help you populate your vector database. And the kind of brains of Copilot is the orchestrator here. This is what Copilot is interacting with. It's collecting what it needs from your Spotfire session. Perhaps it's collecting data from the indexed vector database of your content, combining that information and generating prompts that it uses with the large language model. And maybe doing multiple trips to the large language model to get the answer, formulating the structure of that, and then sending it back to Copilot for the action or the results. And these blue boxes are deployed as containers in your cloud platform of choice. You get those as part of your Copilot download, and you get the Spotfire package to deploy on your Spotfire server. And then you need to provide a vector database and a large language model. And for that, currently supported for the vector database is Milvus or Azure AI Search. And currently supported for the large language models is GPT models coming from OpenAI or Azure OpenAI service. But talking with the Copilot team, they're hoping to also in the next release bring support for Google models and also Amazon AWS models as well, trying to make the whole system more modular and support for other vector databases to work with. It's a fast-moving field. There's a lot of models out there, so That's constantly shifting. A good resource maybe is the Open Medical Large Language Model Leaderboard, and that's produced by the University of Edinburgh in conjunction with the Open Life Sciences AI Foundation, and it's published on Hugging Face. And there they rank all of the AI models that are out there. And they do that based on accuracy. And they basically test those models in a consistent and structured way using known content. So they have thousands of questions, for example, coming from the US medical licensing examination. These are questions with options, multiple choice answers, and known answers for those. So they know the correct answers. They're curated all the questions that they're using from the different sources, PubMed and others, and they test the models on whether they get the correct answer against these questions. And that gives them an accuracy score, and they rank all of the models. Right now, PAM from Google showing slightly more accuracy than GPT-4. But one note is there where it says 5 shots here. They gave it a few pre-runs of the question rather than just giving it an unknown question. So you can interpret that, see what models are out there, see which ones are best. But these are all medical focused on anatomy, genetics, and medical questions. So useful in a clinical context and something to maybe check out. And just finally, Copilot is an add-on for Spotfire, but Spotfire also supports using Python directly inside of Spotfire. That's always been there. So something else to explore is you can use some Spotfire data functions to maybe leverage something like Pandas AI to build your own custom integration with a large language model, and maybe make it more targeted and focused on a specific use case, and maybe pre-baked questions that can be asked within an analysis context. Maybe parameterize some pre-baked questions to really address a specific topic from Spotfire with a large language model in the background. So some options to explore there as well, beyond what's there in Copilot. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Philip, who will go a little bit deeper on Signals Clinical.
Great, thank you, Gerard. So what I'd like to do is shift gears slightly, but and we're going to talk about how can Signals Clinical accelerate AI, and or how can a data system work with AI and support using AI as a guide in your work. And what I'd like to do is set this off by asking you a question, and I'll ask Heather to do the polling question for us.
Okay, great, Philip. So I'll pop back on, and yes, this is our second polling question. And the question is asking, what are your key use cases for clinical data? Are you manage queries, to track collaboration, explore, explain clinical data, explore, explain analytics, or all of the above? Now I'm going to forward this on and let us know your thoughts. What are your key use cases for clinical data? Give them a second just to put their answers in. And we're getting a lot of great questions too. So just as a reminder, if you want to submit a question and you haven't yet, go ahead and do that through the submit question box. And I think we had one viewer who is having trouble seeing her slides. So if you could just hit refresh, that should help you out. And now I think we can probably go ahead and forward to the responses. What do you think, Philip? Should I forward through?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. There you go.
Very interesting. We wanted to try to get a sense of, as AI begins to become available more and more, the earlier poll question showed that some of us are already exploring the use of AI that's available in the internet or in our work tools just to help us with some of our non-clinical data specific document writing or searching the internet or a variety of things. And what we're trying to do is explore how to then move forward with these things in the real world. Now, Revity Signals has a long practice in clinical analytics. And so we have analytics that are built in to review clinical trial data, to look at efficacy results, to look at medical review and query management, FDA validation dashboards, safety case analysis, RBQM, and operational tracking of clinical data, which is part of the reason for that poll question, to get a sense of where your interests might lie. And one of the things that became very clear with this is that you need a really good data set of system underlying the analytical tools to really help scale up your work. And so, and be able to do more studies, more analyses, and work faster. And so those visualizations are shown on the left. Now on the right, what we're showing is a system we've put together, Signals Clinical. It has 3 components that really help accelerate and drive those analytics. And so one of them is an agile data repository. The second is to implement persona-driven workflows. So these are things that you want to do reproducibly, specific people or roles in your organization. And the third would be an integrated collaboration environment, so that whenever work is done, conclusions are made, questions are asked between members of the team, that's all tracked, and the conclusions aren't lost. So looking first at the data solution, so as we talked earlier, you have many sources of information on the left. And so what the system does is it connects to your various data sources, perhaps daily. And it imports those data, and then it begins to unify those data automatically using the same techniques that have been applied yesterday or the day before, and then provides those data, gives you access to them. And in that, then, that repository of data, you now have data from 1, 2, 3, many studies in a cloud environment. That data is ready for you to look at that data either with pre-built workflows or with customized analytics. And and this really helps the part of the work that happens every day doesn't have to be done by a person. It's done automatically by the system. And that really helps to accelerate your access to the data on a near real-time basis. So we're talking about AI today. So where would AI fit in this process? And what I really wanted to emphasize, Brent talked earlier about use of AI for data and for analytics. Gerard gave a great demo of using a specific LLM, the Spotfire Copilot implemented RAG LLM solution, to look at data at 2 points in the chain. So one point would be to look at the data as it's being automatically loaded in our system. And so that could do some of the roles like auto mapping and query notification alerts to the users of data issues. It would look for those on the fly and as it's refreshed every day. And so you could get a current list of newly emerging issues. And then you also may want to look at the data. By the way, that is that has the potential of being unclean data. And so your AI may have challenges working on that data because it's unclean. But once it's been fully accessed, and as you make progress with that data, it will be in a cleaner state. So your pre-built workflows, your customizable analytics both will work better, as will AI. When you implement AI on the unified, imported, refreshed, accessible, AI-ready data, it will be useful for some of the higher level capabilities in terms of providing you guidance, where it may be part of your query management process, it may be part of your medical monitor review of the data through, again, as Gerard was showing, perhaps helping give you pointers as to what it sees in the data or explaining some of the data, or can we actually show progress in doing more and more challenging things with the AI using this higher quality data. So Signals Clinical then has a number of people involved in your organization that are part of this clinical data process, of your clinical trial process. Everything from IT, medical reviewer, data manager, a clinical researcher, or an ops manager. So everybody needs something different working with the data. They have role-specific or persona-specific requirements for what they need to get done, what they need to get done. And AI, similarly, they have different needs for that AI. And so part of what we're working to try to do is to identify what some of those needs might be. So let's take two of these, the medical reviewer and the data manager. So the data manager on the left has a variety of activities around query management and data cleaning and resolution of queries. So the data manager needs configurable data listings and might want AI to help assist data review and access to those studies. And the data manager may need to review data quality, and can AI help manage that data review process so that the AI will help them locate those things that the data manager really needs to look at more urgently. Or automatic tracking of data review. Can AI help coordinate data issues with the medical monitor through that collaboration interface? Similarly, the medical reviewer is doing a variety of things, accessing the latest data, and can AI help monitor adverse safety events? Gerard showed a little bit of that. And data review workflows. Can AI help in the exploratory medical review? Perhaps this is more general, more medical practice focused and more sophisticated than some of the key pre-identified safety event tracking that is being done. And then filtering to newly loaded or queried data. Can AI help in resolving issues by helping with the collaboration between the medical reviewer and the data manager? So this is my last slide. The purpose of our talk today was to help show some of the ways AI may be able to help. And of course, as we're all learning to use AI and incorporate it in our workflow, we at Revity want to partner with our colleagues in pharma and biotech and CROs and vendor partners, and try to identify new ways to use AI and Signals Clinical serves up clinical data in AI-ready form, and that's actually a huge advantage as you attempt to work with AI, with data using AI. and the part of the purpose of the last slide was to be part of this conversation about what do you need AI to do so that we can partner with you to really help develop those new uses of AI. So feel free to reach out to us and talk to us further about your AI needs after we talk. And with that, I'd like to, there's a link at the bottom to Signals Clinical, and any questions you have, I open it up. And
Okay.
I appreciate your attendance and interest.
I'm going to hop back on. Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you so much to all of our presenters for that amazing presentation. We're running a little bit short out of time, so we're going to just jump right into the audience questions. We have quite a few. So let's get to our first audience question, and that is asking, what would you use as the training data for audit reviews? Reviews from previous trials in the same therapeutic area? Who could help me with this one?
Yeah, I'll try to kick it off, and then I'll see if my colleagues have anything else to add. But yeah, admittedly, that is still a new space for us as well, the audit trail, right? That's sort of further down our stream, but really we're trying to analyze, what existing analytics there are in that space. But yeah, in principle or in concept, it would be obviously review on your previous trials, audit records, anything that's closed, and establishing sort of thresholds that would again elucidate success or failure in each of those cases, right? I think that would sort of be the basis of it, of sort of training, and sort of we didn't really sort of dive too deep into sort of the and sort of what RAG can bring into helping guide your model, but being able to sort of feed those examples of prior audit records from closed studies, as well as sort of the criteria that grades the success or changing of your data. Philip or Gerard, anything else you want to add there?
I just want so I'm sorry, I missed the question. This was about training, right?
Training audit data.
Say it again.
Training on a model to analyze audit trail data.
Yes. And so what I wanted to really emphasize is today's talk did not have any training in it. And we didn't attempt to train a modified LLM. What we did was use a parallel technology, retrieval augmented generation, which is a vector database. And without getting technical, all that does is it makes the LLM, which was trained some months ago on existing data, perhaps unrelated to your trial. How do you present information about your current trial to that LLM so it can make an opinion about it? And so we were specifically trying to avoid training a model at this point because we're not sure that, I'm not sure at this point, we understand well enough exactly what questions we need to answer, which would dictate exactly what kind of training we would need to do. So we may do that in the future, of course. But at this point, what Gerard was showing didn't require any training. It required the use of a RAG augmented LLM. And
yeah, I'll just come in there, Philip. So it depends on your approach and the question you're trying to answer. In a traditional machine learning approach where you're trying to make some predictions maybe about the types of audit events you might encounter running this type of trial in this set of countries with these sites, you'd probably use existing data you have of audit trail information from that therapeutic area to try and make some predictions about things to watch out for. And that's quite a traditional approach. Training an actual large language model or retraining it and tuning it is a very expensive process, both in terms of cost and time and effort. So this RAG approach really lets you find the relevant data within your audit trails for the question you're trying to ask and use that as part of your question to the LLM. So based on what you know about audit trails and your generative capabilities, answer the question based on this information that I've given you as part of the query that is your own audit records. So that kind of grounds it in your data, the answer. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, which approach is going to work best, and what strategy you want to deploy there.
Okay, thank you so much, Gerard. And actually, that is our time for today. We had so many great questions, and please don't fret if we didn't get to your question. We will get to your question. They're going to be forwarded on to our presenters, and they'll be replying to all of you post-event. But just thanks so much to our presenters from Revity Signals. Thank you so much to the audience for joining us. And please remember that this will be available for on-demand viewing. You'll receive a link via email as soon as it's available. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.